host, Greg Fenton. Each week, we explore topics and ideas related to the experience of people with conflict and look to promote the profession of conflict resolvers. We are available to connect with at FentenMediation, Fenton Mediation, at gmail.com and at 647-227-4734. Visit us at our Facebook page to like us and Facebook group page to become a member. Also visit YouTube channel, Fenton Mediation. Listen to podcasts of Mediation Station on SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, and on Google Podcasts. Please follow us at our Twitter account at Fenton Mediation. Our topic for conversation today is called The Housing Crisis in Racialized, Marginalized, and Immigrant Communities, a Transformational Action Plan. And with me in a short time will be MPP Faisal Hassan for the conversation. So we are continuing with presenting the program live each Sunday from 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time through Zoom because there is no live in-person programming at the radio station. That's due to the COVID-19 measures that are still in place. We will engage in conversation with everyone attending, able to listen and watch. Microphones and webcams will be closed. If anyone wants to contribute, there are two options. One is to see the chat icon as a bubble at the bottom center of your screen for you to click to then type in a comment or question and then click to send. Or you can click on the reactions icon that is also located in the bottom center to the right. And then that opens up and you'll see a hand icon. Click that and we'll know that we can open up your microphone only and you can orally present your comment or question, and is being displayed right now through my colleague there, Laura. And so the show is being recorded for both video and audio purposes and will be available for public access on SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts, and as I mentioned, through the video at Fenton Mediation. So I want to say thank you very much. And joining me for conversation is MPP Faisal Hassan, and we're going to talk on the housing crisis in racialized, marginalized, and immigrant communities, a transformational action plan. Hi, Faisal. Welcome to the program tonight.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you for having me, Fenton Mediation.
Yeah. So, we have a connection a number of years ago. We reconnected a few months ago when you were visiting for another program at CHHA 1610 AM.
That's right.
And we made eye contact and somehow we said, hey, we know each other. And so I really wanted to have a conversation with you. Initially it was going to be in late January. And that's when the station had first created the new conditions that no in-person. And we had to postpone your visit, and now you're here. And I really appreciate you being here. So you have a strong background in community work. How about you share some of that information? And through the course of the evening, we'll unpack more and we'll get to know more about you, and especially with regard to the conversation topic.
Indeed, thank you. Thank you.
So share some information about your community development background.
Oh, yes, thank you very much. Well, when I graduated from the University of Winnipeg, I moved to Manitoba, to Ontario. And from here, when my contract work ended from Thomas Cook, I was about to go back to Manitoba. And then I saw an ad on the paper asking someone to help those who are homeless and those are at risk of homelessness. And I remember that when I was a teenager, I was homeless. And I said, this is an opportunity for you to really help those who are less fortunate than you. And it was a job for like 2 days a week funded by the United Way. And as soon as I was hired, I really realized this wasn't really a two-day job. This requires a full-time job and many, many folks working on this crisis. So I talked to my boss and I said, do you guys have another, staff full-time? This is really a crisis, and we need more people trying to get involved, helping racialized immigrants and folks who are low-income people who are then really, that was 2000 at the time, and they didn't have a clue how to do this. They said, we hire you and you tackle it. So I walked to City Hall and had a meeting with the Shelter and Housing Division, and I kept talking to them, and they said, okay, we have a week, maybe you can put a proposal, to expand a full-time person there. So that was very successful, and I started working, and then I realized this is not enough for myself only tackling prevention, trying to mediate evictions, trying to prevent, and so forth and so forth. We needed to engage academics such as Professor Robert Morley from the University of York University, and he has contacted his colleagues from University of Toronto and Rice, and they have come up with the first homelessness conference in Canada. And they have done a lot of work on that. We have connected subjects, to their studies. And from there on, I was then invited many forums and to talk about these issues that are affecting the people, my clients and so forth. Then 2007, a member from MPP, member of the provincial parliament in my riding, has won the by-election here. And he had a lot of crises, and still those crises exist in my community here. Someone with a housing background to help the city here. So I was hired to work at the community office to tackle the crisis here, then on. And this crisis, we can talk about later, how it started, the issues. Then from there, within 8 months in the general election in October 2007, he lost the election. And I realized that 8 months of community engagement and community support services, that we have helped a lot of people. So I thought this really to help him maybe re-elected and get involved and organize, and I continued to support him, and he kept running. Unfortunately, have lost thereafter. He ran again 3 times with the same opponent and lost it. But I think for me to continue to work for the community issues, but I was also doing other shelter work, I was doing also another housing work, also work of journalism, another aspect of it, while I was trying to continue to engage in the community. Then the Orange Wave 2011 came, and another member of parliament in my riding was elected to the Orange Wave, to the Jack Layton's victory. And
just to clarify, when we talk about the Orange Wave, we're referring to the political colors generally identified to which party?
The New Democratic Party.
Right.
Yes, the NDP.
Yeah.
And I was then asked to continue working at the constituency office. And there I continued the community work, engaged the federal jurisdiction. Then I was engaged provincial jurisdiction and kept engaged in that. And then I realized in 2014, the work I've been doing since 1999 has been really the background. And I thought that it is time for me to put my name forward and to support be on the table rather than working behind the scenes. So I put myself forward in the neighboring riding of Etobicoke North to run for the federal seat in the House of Commons.
Right.
NDB with the leadership of the Tom O'Cam.
Mm-hmm.
And I have lost that election. But then in 2018, I came back. This community, I've lived here for over 24 years now. So this is a community I've been involved and engaged for that long. So I have run here, and I have won the election here in 2018 under the leadership of Andrew Horvath.
Right.
Who's I was the first Black, the first Somali, and the first Muslim elected in this community.
Mm-hmm.
Proud to also join the largest official opposition ever in the province of Ontario, headed by Andrew Horvat, and also being a member, also abroad, the Black Caucus. It was also the time that a party could actually form enough members to form a Black Caucus. And that was also historic.
Mm-hmm.
And, this is also great, a nutshell of my involvement in the community. But just summarize it, there. But I think I enjoy helping people,
Mm-hmm.
enjoy giving back, because this country, as you know, Greg, I'm an immigrant. And when I arrived here, this country has been so good to me. And my story is a happy story. And I want to give everybody a happy story and to continue supporting people that have been good to me and others who are a member of our community. So that was also
Right.
working as a housing worker, looking as also supporting housing for others, and also working at the aspect of also for different areas of also in journalism and also doing some writing as well.
And I want to acknowledge too that, quote, I'm of an immigrant too. In terms of, I'm not native to this country. And I want to acknowledge the Aboriginal Indigenous people who are really the true people of this country. And though I understand your perspective of saying you're an immigrant as a newcomer, did you come within the wave of the early 90s? Or when did your family migrate?
Well, I think my story was a little bit earlier than that, because I've left in the 80s and have lived in Italy, Rome, and then from I came from there to Winnipeg, Manitoba.
Right.
Yes, myself alone. Yeah.
Yeah, I had another friend who unfortunately, and you may be aware, from Toronto, who was originally from Somalia, who migrated it also with her family in the 80s, Hodin Nanalie,
Yes.
who unfortunately was the victim with her spouse of a car bombing in 2019.
Yes, that's right. In Kismayu, I knew Nale, and she, that was a shocking story to hear that, people are being targeted, minding her own business in the seaport of Kismayu. And the good news of that is also now the people of Vaughan have actually voted to name the school that was originally known as the, I think...
Vaughan Secondary School.
Yeah, but I think there's another name there. I think was it... yes, that name has been really removed now.
Right, yeah.
I think brings about social justice. And he was a slave owner and parliamentarian. That was also really the right person to be named after that school.
Right. So I want to give you a little bit of reconnection for us, you and I, and another person who's a good friend of mine, Istar Ahmed, who maybe she'll drop in or maybe not. She's, we had an event, and that's where you and I met with Istar.
Right.
And an event on August 19th, 2004.
Mm-hmm.
How do I know this so well? Well, I don't have a great memory. I found this agenda through material.
Amazing.
And I want to point out your name is on there through the intros of the MC. I don't know if you can see it there upside down. Yeah. Anyway, I wanted to acknowledge you that you came to speak in an event through Etobicoke Youth and Family Services. And Istar was the person who created that entity. And it was about working with the communities in Etobicoke, especially a lot of youth-oriented work and efforts. And this was an event that Family Support and Youth Services had. Violence Prevention Through Training Award Recognition Ceremony, summer 2004. Guests of honor, MP Roy Cullen, and MPP Shafiq Qadri. So anyway, that's why you and I saw each other at the radio, and then we had this reconnection of energy.
That's
And
right.
I totally understand the interests and efforts underlying your intentions, and I really want to encourage supporting that. So let's navigate in terms of getting more deep into the conversation. What were the things that had the greatest impact on you that helps you define who you are?
Oh, that is a tough question. Well, I think is that, there are many obstacles you will have, many disappointments in life. I think is determination and also perseverance, and that, and also the belief that knowing that anything that comes on your way, you are able to fight it and you'll be able to overcome. A positivism in that term. I remember when I entered from the University of Winnipeg, my first class of introduction to business, I remember the professor there, when he saw me sitting there and sees my name and sees me, he says to me, "You're in the wrong class," And
Why did he say that?
well, I have no idea. And I asked him, why am I? This is my, my name. You see my name, and no one who looks like you ever succeeded in my class, and you're going to be a failure. Why are you here? And that gives you, if you are not able to have that determination. And I told him, I remember that I'm here to succeed, and I have never withdrawn any course that I've registered, whether it's a classical or anything, and I'm prepared to succeed, and I'm here. So he was shocked to get a response like that, and I faced so much racism, to be honest with you, and that is also what comes as someone who's an immigrant, a Black, a Somali, a Muslim, having multiple identities. So what I think gives me that motivation is having hope. I know that there are so many good people out there that are also progressive, that want to make a difference. And I've seen them because this country has been so good to me. There are also ups and downs that comes in your way, folks who are having different kind of ideas of racism and systemic structures and barriers. And that's why I am motivated as soon as I enrolled in the university this day, making a difference and making sure that we make our world better for everyone.
In a way, does that put more pressure on someone such as yourself who does put yourself in a place that, quote, the norm is not of the identity that you are?
Yeah, I mean, it puts you, because there's also people have already perceived ideas of what kind you are because of your color. They already put you in a box, not similar others who might look different, than you. So that, I think, it is the cultural aspect of it, also the deep-rooted, institutionalized racism that exists. So there's also hope that we can also work together to perfect it, to make it better, and to also bring those stories and talk about them. And the great story we just talked about, Hodonale, and the good thing about is naming after that school. Benjamin is the name I was looking for, Benjamin Vaughan. Right. Benjamin Vaughan to Hodonale, that to me is real progress.
Yeah. And it's about change. It's about positive change. People struggle, from my experience, generally with change. And so I think we have to be continually putting pressure on those conditions that are representative of being exclusive, keeping it the status quo, tradition, that is thus a barrier for people who are not, quote, part of that dynamic. And that's the energy with social change, community development work, is to continue to push forward, push along the dynamic that society as a construct is not necessarily the most healthy the way it is and has been created and continues to function. And so that's why I support your whole energy and others as well who are about that. So what do you see your purpose of, in being as a politician now?
Well, I mean, that's a very good point. I think, thank you. I see it as a servant of the public. I am providing a community service and a service to the community that have given me the trust and confidence, fighting the decent and hardworking people of York South-Weston to bring about their voices to Queensburg as their servant. And I'm accountable to them because they're the ones who I'm going to be accountable to represent them and to be their voice at Queen's Park. So I put myself as a public servant and most of all, a representative of the people of York South-Weston.
I would think though that's a lot of pressure in the sense that you obviously are identified or attached as part of a political party, and you present its platform in terms of how it values society and what it sees as its future intentions. At the same time, when you're elected the sole representative, i.e. the member of provincial parliament for your riding, which is York South-Weston, that you have to represent the broader perspective of people who didn't vote for you, who don't also support the same notions and values as the party.
Well, exactly, and that's also the beauty of being a leader. A leader, after the election, you come together and you represent everybody, and it's not because they vote for you or they don't vote for you, but you are proving yourself that you're going to work hard and to earn their trust and confidence, to provide that service that you represent, that you have access to bring that voice to them. And I'm happy to do that service 24/7, 365 days to every single person who lives in my riding. And there are many that come to our office, issues pertaining to municipal issues, federal issues, because we return their calls and promptly and also us providing that service. Because as you know, in my community, there's a lot of neglect that has gone through over the years, and because of representations the community had here for the last 15 years, and currently also from this current government has not been really providing a lot of support and services. And just if I could give you just an example we are in the middle of a pandemic, and last year, March 13, when the pandemic was declared, it took my community late September to have a permanent testing location. That is how many months from March to September, So, and then we had to fight. It took me till September 28th to convince this government to have a permanent location to test. And we have frontline workers here who have been asked, to test again and again. So that tells you the afterthought. And even now today, we talk about vaccine rollouts. And my community only have 8 pharmacies to people to go and have vaccines, where other communities are abandoned. Every corner, and that tells you what the kinds of representation we have, in this community, raising the people's voices and fighting on their behalf. So I intend to change that culture. This community deserves not afterthought, but that they are planned at every single government project that they are included in that, because they deserve and they're entitled to that public service as well.
Right, and what you're referring to with the COVID and the lack of resources within the specific community that you're representative for, that it's also linked with many economic and social issues and concerns.
Indeed.
It's about, the marginalization, the racialization, and the immigrant communities that are totally underserved don't have access to the options, thus the opportunities.
And also, not only the immigrants, racialized, but also the working class,
Yeah.
the working poor, and also, that have also been forgotten, that are basically for the last 15 years, in the last 2 years and 9 months as well.
And so that kind of culture of environment, we'll say, it becomes a norm. It becomes the status quo. And so people of the community, when something happens out in the broader society, they have a sense that, well, we won't really benefit from any opportunities or needs that we may have in terms of bettering ourselves. So one of the passions as well for you is housing.
Yes, indeed. Housing is, and it's also important because without a roof with a roof to live in, you can't really have a security to do anything. You have to have a house, a place to live first. Yes.
So very recently, you presented to Queen's Park what's called Bill 252. Housing is a Human Right Act. And that was considered to make it into a statute, a law. What was your purpose in putting together this particular bill on this particular topic to want it to become law?
Absolutely. That's a very good point. As you know, housing in Ontario is in a state of crisis, especially the racialized, newcomer, and refugee communities are disproportionately affected by these crises. And I first read about a study that done by the Social Planning Toronto and co-authored by two distinguished professors from York University, Lute on Good Gingrich, and also Nomi Lightman. It was a study initiated by the Social Planning Toronto in last year, November 2020, very much influenced this bill and the immediate call to action that is needed to recognize housing as human right in Ontario. Everyone deserves a good, stable place to call home, a place they can afford in a community that makes them feel safe and welcome. The NDP believe that housing is a human right. The housing crisis is not only a public health concern, but also one of a racial economic injustice for Black, Indigenous, racialized, LGBTQ plus folks and disabled people, as well as people surviving the cycle of poverty. There are extra roadblocks, including discrimination and systemic barriers that make it harder to get into a safe, stable, and affordable home. The pandemic has only made housing problems in Ontario that much more dangerous. This bill looks to address those inequities and disparities that exist in access to housing. Housing, as a Human Rights Act, calls for government intervention in housing to focus on the rising inequities and disparities that exist with respect to housing, and to also adopt policies and programs that address the spatial and social exclusion and segregation through equitable access to housing. And we are called in this bill for the establishment of the Office of the Independent Housing Commissioner. And that will collect data relating to the inequities and disparities that exist in Ontario with respect to housing, and will conduct research into strategies to prevent evictions. The Independent Housing Commissioner will report their findings to the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing. A housing inequities and disparities working group will also be established, drawing the experts and lived experience in economic and social challenges may face with respect to access to proper housing in Ontario. And we know that also a government after government has turned their back on people who need to get their families into safe, affordable, and stable housing. For decades, conservative and liberal governments have created loopholes and rules that benefit developers and big property owners and have made it increasingly harder for everyday folks to afford a place of their own. We feel it is time to fix that disparities in housing and to recognize housing as a human right. This bill sets out to just do that.
Well, let me interject, because the Bill 252 is titled specifically as a human right, not as a right. There obviously is a reason why you stressed human right relative to just being, quote, a right. What's that?
Well, I mean, think about everyone deserves a good, stable place to call home. And a country like ours that have so much abundant resources, even veterans who have fought on behalf of our nation in many wars are in the streets of Toronto, have no place to go to. And they are also decent and hardworking people, have no place to live. Therefore, housing as human right means that we are putting people first, and that every single person, a member of our community, deserves a place that they can call home, a place they can afford in a community that that makes them feel safe and welcome.
So your bill 252 was presented as a private member's bill.
Correct.
Relative to would be a public bill. For the benefit of people, what is the distinction of a private member's bill relative to a public bill?
Well, I think let me just explain a little bit clearly. Bills in a legislature, it can come two ways. A government minister can table a bill, which is the government side. And that becomes, the agenda of the government, and but the other members of the legislature, members of the government who are backbenchers, or the official opposition, or the members, independent members, also have an opportunity to table a bill that's called private member's bill, or a motion. The distinction also between motion and private member's bill, as I have been explained, is that if you are attaching money to a bill, like my motion on work integrated learning, then it is a motion because you present it as an emotion because it has attached with money. Whereas just not with money and legislation, then it becomes a bill. So this is one of the bills. The government, other side also, can put a bill, and that's what you're referring to, public. I mean, minister of the government can table a bill on behalf of his ministry and on behalf of his or her government. But other members of the legislature also have that tool to also bring a bill or motion, and that mine is on the category of a bill, and that's member, because the elected member has that tool. So that's what we call private members. And in the legislature, certain days is reserved for the debate of private members' bills to be debated.
So from my experience of knowing, and I'm not a politician, I'm not at Queen's Park, and I don't follow every day for sure. I just know, I'm aware that very seldom do private members' bills, especially from opposition members, do they actually pass in law?
Oh, they do. I mean, my bill, I put two, 2019 February, I tabled a bill, a motion, work integrated learning. And that work integrated learning, I called for the government to create 27,000 internships, placements, and co-ops for young people who are in colleges and universities, and those who are not in school. And also, we also provided skill trades and also opportunities have also been given placements and co-ops. And that motion was actually passed at the legislature, February 28. My bill on 2020, also my bill for recognizing a Somali Heritage Week was also, that was a bill, and that also was carried and was also adopted and got royal consent. My third bill, which was also, Housing as a Human Right Act, was voted down and was defeated. And this was the first bill I brought, or a motion that has been defeated, and the government didn't support it. All the members, the majority of the members of the legislature hasn't supported it. Even, my colleague, Jill Andrew from Toronto St. Paul's also have had some successes also in some bills as well. So there are some elected members who are successful putting through motions and bills that are not part of the government, that are part of the official opposition, that have passed many bills and motions at the legislature.
For sure, I understand that. And, the dynamic is that we're sitting provincially with a majority government that has the power to put forth whatever, for the most part, and it has thus the numbers through the power of that to, if they present something from the sitting party that's government, it usually will pass.
That's right.
Relative to someone who's not of the sitting government. So
yes, the probability, you're right, because they have the numbers. No doubt about it. But also there's also public pressure when the public, when I put a bill like work integrated learning, it was a motion, the students, the young people, the unemployed, we had an interest in this. They have been writing to the government, and communities were coming to the government, and because of that, they see the pressure and the political implications and emotions and bills like that. They do support it because of what they see on the polls, right? But I think some cases, yes, like housing is a human right. This is also something that people will have to know. The priority of this government and also the previous government, which has 15 years to do something about it, has not done much about. And if I go back about also the housing crisis, and that also, it started with the Liberal federal Prime Minister, John Chrétien, I don't know if you remember that, when they said that we have nothing to do with housing, we don't want to get involved, 1994. So they downloaded to provincial authorities, then Mike Harris, Emily Eves, Dr. McGuinty, Dr. Wynne, and all of them downloaded into municipalities. And that is where the crisis has begun, and those Darkford also just keeps scheming to help developers and billionaires, investors at the expense of everyday people. And that is also a crisis where we need to actually have a housing plan, where the NDP, I don't know if you saw it or read about it, about a month ago, my leader, Andrew Horvath, has launched our housing plan. And that housing plan also is available on OntarioNDP.ca, or you can just Google Ontario NDP housing plan, and there you have it.
So what I would say, I know about another private member's bill that is more connected in terms of the profession of work that I do. It was Bill 34, which was in December of 2016. And it was the Children's Law Reform Amendment Act, relationship with grandparents. And that was sponsored through Mr. Mantha, Michael Mantha, from Algoma. Again, another NDP person.
That's right.
Want to acknowledge that, right? I mean, these are a lot of social change, quote, / social justice efforts to try to make society more inclusive, more sensitive, more representative of the broad dynamic that may not necessarily always have the voice. And so, your Bill 252 didn't pass. I'm going to qualify that at this time.
That's right, it didn't pass.
I would suspect that your intention and your interest is to somehow formulate a way to get the energy out there so that at some future point, sooner rather than later, that this will become much more profound in terms of a public conversation.
Yeah, yes, and also I think this bill also had an opportunity. These are also, you know, the work that the Social Planning Toronto does.
Yes.
Study they've done, and I've quoted the two distinguished scholars from York University, Lou and Good Gingrich, and also Calgary University, Naomi Lightman, have studied 5 years of study of looking into these crises. And this is what inspired me to really say, how do we really give this current government an opportunity to create a working group to study the disparities and inequities as related to housing, and also to establish also a housing commissioner who will collect data with these disparities and inequities in housing. And that provides the government minister of housing and municipal affairs to get these informations and act on behalf of the province. This was an opportunity the Conservatives have missed it here, because what we have proposed in this bill is to provide the independency, bring the experts, bring the lived experience, and also have another point, which is an independent housing commissioner that will look into the data and seriously look at how do we tackle the issue of eviction, the housing, the inequities, the disparities. And I think this was an opportunity. This government have missed it because they could have adopted it, and they could have, the housing minister and municipal affairs could have actually gotten that data and experienced of lived experience and experts in this fact, in this area, to actually put housing as human right, because that's what it is.
And I totally understand and appreciate and, support the whole, and that's part of my purpose with the program. Tonight's topic and other topics, we've been doing this for over 16 years. So it's about social change, trying to put pressure, agitate for positive change within systems that are not representative and inclusive of the diverse nature of our society, so that there are more healthy and productive ways to help people who are, quote, marginalized on the outs. They're not part of the power base, if you want. So if the sitting government does not have the interest, it's not their interest. And interest means that it helps satisfy something for them, because ideally in the world that I function, it's not about me as a third person trying to help people in conflict for my benefit. It's to see for the benefit of the people I'm working to support and assist, for them to get the actualization of their own interests to be satisfied.
And also a legislature like Ontario Legislature, where we look the best interests of the people of Ontario, and housing has been a crisis and have been downloaded to municipalities, and majority municipalities such as Toronto don't have the resources to tackle housing. And also a lot of them, they say, there's no data with regards to eviction numbers, who is evicted, what are the inequities, what are the disparities. Getting a real collection of data and evidence of that would provide any government, the tools to work on the people's business. And I think this was also like before.
The rationalization to say, yes, that makes sense. So let's invest money, energy, time into that, because yes, there are people who are directly affected on the front lines living these profound experiences without housing, proper housing. They're vulnerable. At the same time, that has consequences for the broader society. There are costs that everybody who is a taxpayer, who's a citizen or resident or somebody here for whatever reason contributes. They are affected in the healthcare system, the education system, etc. It impacts everybody.
Indeed, and I think someone also who have experienced homelessness, I do believe anyone could become homeless, and that's why I think by recognizing it, housing as a human right, we prevent any member of our community wandering in the streets or especially, elderly or folks who have contributed so much in our great country that they are homeless in the streets of Toronto. And this would also give us a priority to make sure that we have a plan. And, we as the official opposition, Greg, have been propositioning to this government. This bill is one of that. And also, we also proposed ahead of time what we will do as a government, an NDP government. And if you look at our housing plan, just Google Ontario NDP housing plan, it gives you options, so much options for people to actually have to provide them even a down payment, to become homeowners, and to also have more options for people to once and for all tackle the issue of housing. And we know the Liberals had 15 years to help. They chose not to. And they opened up huge loopholes to foreign corporations and billionaires could snatch up properties and drive housing and rental prices up. They let landlords hike the rent in between tenants and encouraging bad apples to throw renters out in order to hike the rent for the next tenants. And we know now that Ford just keeps scheming to help developers and billionaires, investors at the expense of everyday people. He is being caught secretly trying to give green belt to developers 3 times so far. And he's planning to also cancel the foreign buyers tax, which will drive up home and rental prices even more. He refused to help renters and homeowners at all during COVID-19 pandemic, which we also proposed ideas of how to do that. And the Ford government scrapped the promised goal of ending homelessness the year 2025.
Well, let me present to you a couple of things. One is a question, and then I want to bring in a couple of the comments. So the question is, as we just earlier discussed, that the people who are living the experiences, many in the racialized, marginalized, and immigrant community, and I'm not saying that's the only people, though those are more profoundly affected, and that's a lot of the focus for tonight. And how do we get that the broader society can appreciate the perspective of the lived realities that individuals, such as within the communities that you're serving, that the rest of society feels that same need and interest to support for the positive change, especially about housing?
Yes, I mean that's a very good point, and you also acknowledged the problem of housing. It affects everybody. To be honest, I mean there are some programs that are not very helpful, but at least try the attempt to keep people in their places, like rent bank and so forth, even though they have been cut again, and programs that have been working for to support it. I think what we need to do is to talk about the report. If everybody reads the work that the Social Planning Toronto has done with regard to their report and their study of about 5 years study by Lutman and Gingrich, that gives also the disparities and inequities in housing. And I think people, when they understand this too can happen to you, because no one is able to afford to even buy a Toronto, any place. And if you look at it also, Greg, that even folks who have grew up in neighborhoods they have grown up, they cannot even leave. They can't afford to leave communities in which they grew up and living for years. And that is, again, the failure of consecutive liberal and conservative governments that have actually, it started from the federal government, from Crutcher and Martin and other, Harris and all of that, and they're simply downloading housing responsibilities into the municipalities and allowing all these speculators and flippers into the market, which now I do believe, and unfortunately a lot of people don't see this, it's affecting them, but it's just if you lose your job, and a lot of people are now impacted because of the pandemic. A lot of people now are worried after the pandemic. A lot of people might be also become homeless, not be able to afford their mortgage, and and so forth. So that's why we need a government that cares, and government that sees it, housing as human right, to put housing once and for all, an important issue, front and center. And this bill has brought that into the front and center, talking about the housing as human right, but also giving options to the government to actually understand and educating these folks about the inequities and disparities that exist in housing. And also creating also another way of saying, we need that knowledge, we need the report, we need data collection. When we have that tools, then we are able to implement the policies that are sound, that can make things better for everybody in Ontario.
Let me point out here one of the comments, very important topic that affects marginalized populations across Canada, and then I'm going to qualify that. It's, many people, because we never know our next moment and how we will be impacted, especially with the unexpected manner of what has happened with COVID. So one day we have whatever, and the next moment we're totally vulnerable to life in general, nature.
Absolutely, yes.
So in BC, we have received funding from the Law Society to implement housing-specific advocates in legal clinics. This investment at the grassroots has made a huge difference. Do you see education and awareness of these success stories as case studies that can be used to lobby government at all levels? Because housing, I think you'll agree, is not a political issue. It's a societal issue.
That's right. No, I agree with you. And I think any examples, that's why our working group, I've suggested in this bill, to have a working group that have also mixed people who've lived experience that can bring their own experiences, and also experts in the field, so that we can also learn the practices, the successful stories somewhere else. And I think, yes, definitely that will help. But we need also a different kind of government. Government can understand the importance of the potential of human beings, and putting people first, and providing those kinds of opportunities to make sure that people have a roof over their head. And if this continues, no one is able to afford places like Toronto. And where do you want people to go? Are you going to create overcrowding and public health?
Well, we know, in Toronto, for example, that there's homelessness is a major issue, and the shelter system and the public health and how they have to try to support people, especially now with the last year of COVID and how that's even more profoundly impacted people's lived experiences. What do you envision to provide for some kind of pathway, knowing that your bill was presented, though I know that's not going to stay there. It's going to be energized in some way. What would you provide for some meaningful action to transform the conversation to then be put into play? Because I know talk is cheap. That's my world too, talk. It's, first you get an idea, then you think about what you're going to do, what's not doing. The real test is to put something tangible in play, an action plan. What do you?
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. And I think this was one of these steps. We could brought a concrete proposition to the government and say, now this bill, we can work with something that can actually address and also reference to also the work that the social planning Toronto has done. These distinguished professors have actually put their resources and their time for 5 years to study this. Also, the action plan we have taken also, Greg, is that my leader has also announced about a couple of months ago about our vision for housing for an NDP government. And that is detailed, how we're going to do it and how we're going to create also a supportive housing, co-ops, and also other options for people to own their own places and their own homes. A lot of people don't have that down payment. And if you're making less than 200,000, then you will qualify our program to get that down payment and also get moving it. Because a lot of people are working, but they don't have savings to actually put down that percentage of down payment. And I would encourage that our plan of action is also out there. You can actually just Google Ontario NDP housing plan. And if you wanted it, actually, I can send you, just email me, fhassan-co@ndp.on.ca.
We'll find a way, maybe my colleague in the background in the shadows there, Laura, you want to restate that? Maybe Laura can type it in to the chat.
Yes, fhassan-co@ndp.on.ca. And if you can found it anywhere, or even if you want to engage with me, there is also my email.
You have more time in your world, your life, because
no,
you're 24 hours.
No, there's a hyphen, Laura.
Between
hyphen dash CO. That's it. Yeah. fhassan hyphen CO at ndp.on.ca. You want me to write, to type it? Maybe that's easy if I do that.
She's done something different. Is that representative?
No. That's not. I think that's not.
You want to type it then?
I will type it quickly, so that we don't want people wondering how come he's not responding to us, and we don't get the email, right? I'll just do it quickly. So there you have it. fhassan CO at ndp.
Yeah. I take responsibility and ownership as to Laura's comment. It's my fault.
No worries. There we go.
I'm totally accountable. No,
yeah.
We use a little bit of humor here at the same time.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's awesome. That's great.
So in terms of, we're going to close out very soon. What do you see as being your next step?
Keep fighting on behalf of the decent and hardworking people of York South-Weston, and definitely working hard to earn their trust and confidence, to work together to have an NDP government that can actually tackle the issue that matter to the people of Ontario. Because we had, the Liberals had 15 years to fix the crisis in this province. They chose not to. And now we have a government that we have realized what their priorities are, the cuts, and also catering to billionaires, and also trying to also open the green belt to developers and so forth. So basically, we need to work together to make sure that the next election, we have a government that under Horvath is the premier of this province, so that we can tackle the important issues of our time and get to business. We also released, Greg, about our Green New Democratic Deal. And we're focusing about justice, jobs, and hope. And that too is also available. And folks could also write to me. I can provide to them as well.
So you also are the official opposition critic for youth opportunities.
Indeed, yes.
And I know you have a passion from your history with youth and development, community. How do you see the opportunity of engaging youth as part of the housing?
Yes, I think a lot of young people, when they are in universities and colleges, and someone in my teen years, I was homeless. And I can understand the important also housing. If you are not with your family, if you are also the family is, you are away from the family and you are another city, another town for school, and housing is very expensive. So making sure that, we provide opportunities for young people. For example, 2019, February 28, I tabled my motion, Work Integrated Learning. And the idea is to provide young people paid internships and co-ops and placements so that we can provide them first experience and little money too, because young people can't work for free. So we have to give them also paid positions created. I asked the government 27,000, and also to expand that young people who are unemployed and who are not in school also be provided opportunities of the free trades, skilled trades, to have an opportunity to also have internships paid, co-ops and placements. So we can put people, young people, to work and provide them that opportunity because, Greg, school and work go hand in hand. They're inseparable. I think that culture of telling young people, go to school with no work experience, they come out of school and there they have no jobs and they are asked, oh, you don't have experience for this position. You just graduated. Then what I thought is to provide them the experience necessary early on, while they are in schools, while they are in colleges and universities. And what I'm fighting for as the Youth Opportunities Critic for the Official Opposition, to create more opportunities for young people, to also invest in education, in early on, in schools, grade 1, grade 12, grade 1 to grade 8, and provide them also resources, hiring more teachers, making sure we have extra curriculum to support them, and also opening those schools for young people as a community hub. So volunteers can come, also teach them other skills, such as technology, such as high-tech, finances, and also engage them, also opportunities of summer jobs, and so that we create opportunities, our young people having work experience and school, so that they're busy throughout the year. Either they're in school or they're in job opportunity. So they are out of trouble. And now we're going to make sure.
So using a lot of your past lived experience, which is based a lot on your passion and your interests, and that's why you are who you are now. What does having this kind of conversation tonight mean to you? Especially as how you've identified a Black person, a Muslim, a person of Somali background or descent, and being part of the Black caucus. What does this mean to you?
Well, this tonight's discussion, Greg, thank you first for highlighting the importance of the issue of housing in the Fenton mediation. It means a lot to me because by talking about the issue of housing also, lived experiences also contribute in more meaningful way, because if you have never experienced in certain issues, you know, you might not understand the impact it has for people, not only racialized but also anybody, you know, could lose their job, especially the working people. We have also know that 60% of workers don't even have paid sick days. And that tells you the priorities of this government and the previous government, that people have been neglected. And this continues. So having this discussion and highlighting these important issues and the work of the official opposition, myself as also the critic for youth opportunities are doing, is also to talk about what opportunities we can create for young people, tackling the root causes also of neglect that has happened over the years, for lack of investment, for lack of opportunities, for also systemic racism that also underlying, deeply rooted into our institutions of governments, and also making sure that also we have also diversity, and that also bringing diverse people, different people with different actually makes things better.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it needs to be raised to the conscious level to get acknowledgement of our realities. When people are in denial, and then they say, oh, that's their problem, it doesn't affect me, so therefore I don't necessarily need to do anything about it. That's where we're not connected and not relating to the lived experiences and perspectives that also could provide for us as anybody and everybody to be in a precarious situation. We're okay one moment, and the next moment, life being filled with unexpecteds. We never know. So I just want to put it out to the people in attendance. Anybody want to ask anything before we say thank you and move along? Anybody want to make a chat comment or question just to consolidate this? Faisal, how are you feeling right now?
Great, great, and thank you for the opportunity, Fountain Mediation, and also the wonderful work you're doing. I know that since 2004, you've been engaged in grassroots supporting communities, and this is also such a program that benefits many folks in our community. And I thank you for your contribution to our community.
Actually, it goes back further than that. So it's 98 when I got connected on Eddystone and Jane and Finch area with conflict mediation services of Downsview. And that's where my passion, I really connected with my inner self in terms of my purpose and intention. And that's part of what I try to provide a means. I'm not the person. I'm a means to assist others to support their journey to create the change they need. So it's not about me putting it on them. It's about being somehow equipped with some kind of opportunity myself that can be supportive in nature to support someone else to get the transformation that they so desire and so are rightfully, as a human right, entitled to.
Absolutely, and that's the passion and determination.
Yeah, so my colleague Laura, without passion, without disruption, there's no change. And I think we both identify with the words agitator, provocateur, and disruptor. That's part of the social change dynamic and energy. And so the journey continues. Thank you very much for tonight, Faisal.
Well, thank you, Fountain Mediation, and thank you, Greg, for having me this evening and also highlighting the work we are doing on behalf of the decent and hardworking people of York South-Weston, and joining you tonight to talk about the work we have done, and also our bill, housing as a human right, that this current government has voted down again.
Well, and what I qualified that with is at the moment. So it's a journey that continues. That's part of this whole work and effort. So, at some near point after the program, not tonight, we'll get this edited, and then I think this is a great tool to help educate and inform the broader community, because obviously people who are directly living it know it. They're not the ones that need to be necessarily educated and informed. It's the others that need to be, that can help support for the injection of positivity, programming, the funding that needs to be provided, and the policy changes institutionally, systemically, that will help create what we're all looking for, ideally, as human beings. So thanks very much, Faisal. Everybody, thank you for attending, and welcome you to visit again. And we'll get it out there and let people know. And Faisal will also let people know too. And
indeed, yes.
We're going to encourage that energy over to you too, Faisal.
Thank you. Thank you for having me again. And thank you to your entire team, Laura and Greg and everyone else on the Fountain Mediation. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much. So everybody's welcome to, say goodbye, say good night. See you soon.
Bye.
Good night.